I'm going to have to repeat that later before we go to lunch. Make sure that the afternoon MC knows the theme of the day. Peter Gordon had his, so that can be ours. So our next panel is our point of sale panel that is going to be led by David Lott. So if you would all please come to the stage, make yourselves comfortable, and then you can move forward with your introductions and remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here, and thanks to Marla and Peter for inviting me to participate in the program again this year. It's great to have you here in Atlanta, our hometown, so a great South Georgia, Southern welcome to all of you here. Hope that you had a good evening. Some that aren't here evidently had a better evening than us, but hopefully they'll trickle in here. I think we win the award for having the session with the longest title here. So I'm condensing it, and I'm renaming the session Cryptocurrency: Secrets to Buying Low, Selling High. No, just kidding. Have a great all-star panel here that I'm going to let them introduce themselves and their company. I surprised them a little bit this morning in our pregame huddle and asked them to also share their walk-on song. We're not able to play those songs this morning, but we'll see how that goes. But it's great to have Heather, Alan, and Ali, and I know from the discussion that we're going to have today, you'll understand the value that they bring to the session. Little bit about my area at the Atlanta Fed. I'm sure y'all have heard of the Federal Reserve Bank and the Federal Reserve System before, especially in the news for the last 5 or 6 months or so. Let me provide the disclaimer that I have absolutely nothing to do with monetary policy, so we'll avoid those questions. But I'm with a group called the Retail Payments Risk Forum at the Atlanta Fed. And our mission really primarily is twofold. One is research, and I'm going to touch upon some of that research that we do. And the other is education. We have weekly blogs, we do quarterly webinars, white papers, we actually hold conferences, forums, and do a lot of speaking engagements like this. So you'll have in the presentation the links that hope that you'll use that as a resource. So more to the stars of the show here. I'll ask Heather to start us off talking about PAX and her role, and if she's been able to come up with a walk-on song.
Yeah, he kind of caught us off guard this morning with a walk-on song, and as there's not an athletic bone in my body, I've never had a walk-on song. So I think I'd probably go with something standard like "We Are the Champions." So thank you all for being here this morning. I know it's fairly early. Based on the traffic in the booth this morning, I don't think most of you were up at the 7 a.m. crack of dawn with us. So PAX is a terminal manufacturer. If you don't know that, we are one of the world's largest, obviously coming into the United States about 10 years ago and making our mark here. We've continued to grow year over year. We are continuing that growth, and one of our claims to fame has always been Android terminals. 8 years ago, we started Android terminals in the United States. You'll see all of our competition now following suit on that. So we believe we are one of the world's experts right now, especially in the United States, in Android terminals. So I'll leave that as my pitch. Come and see all of the new terminals that we have in our booth, and look forward to meeting you all while we're here.
Thanks, Heather. Alan, up next.
Good morning. My name is Alan Kopelman. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Nationwide Payment Systems, and we're a payment consultant company. I also host a podcast called B2B Vault, which is on 2 to 3 times a week, wherever you can listen to podcasts and YouTube. And we have recently launched a new platform which is going to give small to medium-sized businesses the ability to accomplish omni-channel, which the large big boxes have been able to do for the last few years, and small businesses have struggled. But this product is going to bring affordability to small business owners so that they can compete with big box stores.
Thanks, Alan. Last but not least, Ali Raza.
Morning, everyone. It's great to see everyone. I mean, it's been a while since we've been at conferences. And my name's Ali Raza. I'm with Protiviti. We're a global management consulting firm. Personally, I've been in consulting a long time. I'm sort of a career payments management consultant. And Protiviti is a medium-sized global management consulting firm. We do a lot of work in technology consulting, risk and compliance, digital strategy, internal audit, and I'm part of the payments practice. And small world. Dave and I used to work together at Spear and Associates many years ago for several years. So great to see.
We
Dave.
traveled up and down the Western Hemisphere on many trips.
And in my song. Shout out to Talking Heads, Burning Down the House.
Perfect.
And mine for this conference is money, money, money. So.
Oh, I didn't say my song.
Oh.
Well, I said it's going to be taking care of business.
There you go. There you go. That's a great one. I think before we got into the discussion, I would share with you a little bit of relevant research from one of our major projects that we do at the Atlanta Fed, and that's the Survey and Diary of Consumer Payment Choices. This is an annual survey that we do. There's a panel that's managed by the University of Southern California, around 6,000. We generally have around 3,400, 3,500 respondents to the survey and the diary. And the diary is, as its name says, in that the respondents on a rotating schedule record all of their payment transactions over a 3-day period of time. They capture about 15 different elements of that payment transaction so that we can slice and dice it. The real value of that survey is that it's the only public, nationally representative survey that captures the use of cash among the other payment methods that are being used there. And I just wanted to share some of the highlights from that survey in reference to what we're going to talk about today in terms of methods of payment. And we see here on this slide over the years, this was discussed in some of the sessions yesterday, the declining use of both cash and checks, but the increased usage with regard to cards, whether it be debit, credit, or prepaid stored value cards. But you can see over the years how that has changed. And then if you look at the consumer payments behavior in terms of their online purchases versus their in-person purchases, look at 2020 and 2021, of course you see the impact of COVID in 2020 in terms of you had a number of businesses shuttered if they weren't considered an essential business. You had restricted activities, things of that nature. So, of course, it's somewhat of a dog-biting human story from the standpoint we all know that in-person activity dropped. But it has started to slowly come back, and the October 21 or 22 will be out soon, so it will be interesting to see how much of that recovery has taken place. This shows very dramatically. This survey asked the participants if they had made a in-person payment within the last 30 days. You can see the precipitous drop-off that occurred in April of 2020, right a month, into the COVID pandemic, where it dropped down to just over a third of the participants, whereas prior to that, it had been almost 100%. But again, it's showing some recovery on the in-person side. So that's what we really wanted to focus on in our discussion today, talking about the POS and the customer experience, both at the point of sale, in person, as well as we want to talk about the remote side, since that's where a lot of the transition. So I'm going to start off a question to Heather and Alan to give you their perspective with regard to what are you seeing in terms of in-person POS systems enhancements currently. Heather, you want to start us off?
I think in our world, obviously as a terminal manufacturer, we don't deal specifically with the end merchant. So we base what we're doing based on our acquirers and ISOs, banks that are coming to us. But what we see is this trend towards using that terminal for a lot more things than just payment. Payment has become the necessary evil, so to speak, and that's what everybody does. But now what else can you add on to these terminals to support in the future? They're learning to run their businesses. As Alan said earlier, the omni-channel experience in a small merchant is becoming much, much more relevant and much more affordable and easy to do. And that's what we're trying to do with a lot of our terminals, is make them an easy, affordable option for smaller merchants to do what our big box guys are doing today.
Yeah, I think point of sale is definitely evolving, and it's going to become more about software and platforms and less about hardware. I mean, you're going to need hardware, because hardware I don't think is going to go away. I mean, I think we're going to see maybe as the chip production increases that prices start to drop for terminals, and a lot of mobility also for businesses now, because as businesses shuttered up, a lot of businesses went mobile. And also businesses, we're using like our omni-channel to show businesses how easy it is to take what they're doing in the point of sale and transfer it onto a website so they can offer the same things big box stores do. In-store pickup, curbside pickup, drive-through pickup, in-person pickup, shipping goods that they normally weren't doing. And small businesses need that so that they can keep up with the big box stores and give the customers the payment experience that they want.
Ali, do you want to polish off your crystal ball and tell us your thoughts in terms of the future of hardware and software?
Yeah, so no, I agree with Alan. I mean, so one, I think, point of sale as a device is probably not going to go away anytime soon. But to your point,
We hope not.
It's gone, way beyond just payment acceptance. So, sort of the device does a lot more, and really it's about software. It's about software and bringing more utility, both at the consumer level as well as the merchant level. And yeah, I mean, we're just talking as we were walking here. I mean, ATMs are still around. I mean, people still write checks, and maybe a lot of these choices are not, one or the other, and things do coexist.
We're going to dwell a little bit into some specific technologies that is taking place. And Alan, I'll ask you to start us off with regard to QR codes are becoming more popular. We're seeing utilization in a lot of different ways. How do you see them playing out as a payment method or other applications going forward?
I can tell you, like, I started an app company under my payment company several years ago. It's out of business now. Apple changed the rules, and we used to use QR codes. So download the app, listen to. Now, the QR code, that was a technology that was sitting on the shelf that now made the biggest comeback of any technology I've ever seen. Restaurants use it for look at the menu. Everybody's used to scanning QR codes. They have QR codes out in the front, find a restaurant, and all different types of uses for QR codes. As far as payments goes, I wish that the card brands would make it a card present transaction somehow by, forcing some kind of code or something, because there's a lot of chargebacks when it comes to QR codes. But I do think it's a useful thing for payments, and it's also a great marketing method for businesses, all types of businesses, to use for marketing.
Heather, anything?
Yeah, I would agree. We're seeing a surge of QR codes to be used for, all the use cases that I think COVID drove back home very quickly, that we had to figure out how to use those codes. We see it in, all of our terminals can support reading QR codes and utilization of QR codes. So it's something that we do as a necessary, it's a norm in our world from a terminal manufacturer's perspective, but we do see lots of different use cases, not necessarily payment being the big one, but a lot of other, people sending QR codes to get their terminal manuals, their use case manuals, their, user guides, all of that stuff, and using them in that environment, which we can do at the terminal.
Ali, anything to?
Yeah, no. So I think COVID obviously accelerated use of QR codes quite dramatically. I think really stemming from restaurant menus, but beyond sort of the retail environment and point of sales and so on. I mean, I think it's interesting to see a food truck guy, for example, hanging a QR code and taking Cash App payments as a for example. And that's sort of like a little bit outside of the realm of the payment networks and the acquiring banks. It's more like really a person-to-person transaction facilitated by QR codes. So I think in that sector, we're probably going to see some growth near to medium term.
One thing that we've seen, again, perhaps dramatically increased as a result of the pandemic, is the utilization of contactless transactions at the point of sale. I jokingly interact with Marla from the standpoint, I've always been a contrarian with regard to mobile payments to some degree, in that ever since 2015, it's been the year of breakout mobile payments for the last seven years there, but I keep getting invited back, so like that discussion. But we are seeing a tremendous impact, both from the phone device side as well as the card side. What are y'all seeing at the merchant level in terms of equipment upgrades, and are they steering customers to contactless? What are you seeing out there?
I definitely think COVID accelerated contactless. I mean, contactless has been available for a long time. When EMV was mandated 2015, every merchant had it on their counter. Then merchants started calling us up on the phone during COVID. Can we take Apple Pay? Can we take Google Pay? Yes, 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 yes. And and then we can go into the back end and we can see how many cards, and you can see. Now the bank started sending out these tap cards, and people can just take their phone up to the gas pump, and you just see or to the payment terminal in the grocery store. You just see more and more people using these contactless methods. Not every bank participates in Apple Pay and Google Pay for other reasons, and then you also see the alternative payment methods, those increasing. But now those businesses who were using those all getting 1099s because of new rules by the government. So,
Heather, any?
Yeah, I would agree. Contactless, I mean, at least in the terminal world, it's been around for a long time. Our terminals have supported contactless for many, many years, but I do think COVID really forced that issue and forced people to start supporting contactless. We don't build a terminal today that doesn't support contactless in our world, so I think we're going to continue to see that rise as people were forced to use it and now understand how easy it is to use, and that it is a methodology that they could be using very simply.
Ali, anything to add?
Yeah, again, I think, COVID played a big role in terms of accelerating contactless. But I would draw the distinction between payment with a contactless card versus a Apple Pay or a phone-based mobile payment. So I think on the card side, we've probably seen a steeper growth curve.
Yes.
Just in terms of, again, COVID and people just, not wanting to touch things and so on. And it's an interesting dynamic because it's one of those things where I think both the cards and the terminals kind of came together quite well. But having said that, there's probably still a lot of runway because, banks we work with, I mean, obviously big banks, everybody's got contactless cards, but if we sort of go into the, the mid-sized, smaller financial institutions, credit unions, there's a ton of banks and financial institutions out there that still are not issuing contactless yet. It's on the roadmap. It'll get taken care of. You reissue, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's a good bit of runway out there, and we'll continue to see that. In chip, I think sort of we went from sort of swipe to insert to wave, and I think that's accelerating quite well.
Alan, you touched upon this just a second ago in terms of alternative payments
Right.
and what you're seeing. Would it be fair to say that you're seeing that as more challenging today than before, or?
I think as, merchant acquirers are definitely seeing a drop in volume as merchants start to discover maybe some of these alternative payments, Zelle, Venmo, Cash App, things like that. Other things, buy now, pay later is impacting acquiring. Even crypto in some businesses is being used as a, transactional. And, some merchants, some smaller merchants will use that, bigger merchants won't. I mean, I remember the days when I first started in this business in 1998. Merchants used to get separate deposit for debit, Visa, MasterCard, a separate deposit for Discover, a separate deposit for Diners, a separate deposit for Amex. And now all that comes in one deposit to the merchant, through acquiring. So some merchants shy away from all these alternative payments, and some of them embrace it. So it's definitely out there for the merchants to use.
Heather, what are y'all seeing?
Yeah, I think in our world, we see a lot of questions related to it. So we're getting questions. Obviously, I don't deal at the end merchant level. It's historically, we deal with people reselling to the merchants. So we get a lot of questions from ISOs, acquirers, how to support the alternative payments. Can the terminal support it? What does that mean? So a lot of what we're doing is just educating them as to what a terminal needs to support versus what has nothing to do with the terminal.
Ali, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think alternative payments, play well in certain segments of the industry, not across the board. Certainly, we're seeing growth in the Venmos and the Zelles, but for the most part, I mean, I think the cards, credit, debit continue to dominate. If anything, I think there's been a shift in terms of form factor. We're just talking about mobile payments and using phone. But sort of behind that Apple Pay transaction, behind that Google Pay transaction, 9 times out of 10, there's a credit card sitting there. So one of the things that I'd be curious, I mean, as real-time payments sort of scales in the U.S., takes off, will it really get to the point of sale? Will people start using real-time payments, bank transfers to, pay at the grocery store, pay at the gas pump? Lower cost transaction for the merchant, generally convenient. Most consumers relatively ambivalent because debit rewards went away. So probably there is where I think we're going to start to see some growth. But the other is like the Venmos. I mean, crypto. I think the jury's kind of out on that. So cards probably dominate right now.
I would agree with that. Cards definitely dominate.
The second part of our session title was talking about the customer experience. What are you seeing in terms of are merchants other than the major big retailers successfully integrating their systems, their applications to provide a quality customer experience, or is it still pretty segregated in terms of like loyalty and other things?
I think the smaller merchants don't realize what's out there that they can get that can incorporate all of the services that they need into one platform. And it's slowly starting to trickle down. And merchants need to develop, the customer experience that's what they want. You have to give the customer the experience they want at your business, whether you're a restaurant or retailer, whatever that is. You need to be able to provide that experience. Even on yesterday was a panel about B2B. Even on the B2B side, I have a term that I coined called the consumerization of payments. And B2B really needs to embrace that because, the check is in the mail, doesn't work anymore. They need to set up payment portals and use e-invoicing and things like that to collect money. And that's what customers are used to doing on the B2C side. And B2B needs to more embrace that. Recently, I hooked up a customer with a payment portal. Says to me, he goes, one, I didn't realize it was that easy. And two, he goes, I don't know why I didn't do this a couple years ago when you first pitched me. So it's, these things are out there. They're easy to use. Like I said, we developed with a partner of ours a platform that basically gives all of that and more to a merchant to use for a very affordable price.
Heather?
I think in our world, our CEO is famous for saying it's just software. And that's kind of what we see in our world, is it is just software. And what can we do with that software, in our case, in a terminal, to give the omni-channel experience and to let them do whatever they want with their terminals. And I think we're seeing the groups we deal with the ISO sales reps, the bank sales reps, all the sales reps that we're working with, is that we're teaching them to be a consultant versus just selling on basis points. That doesn't work anymore. You need to understand what they can do with their business, what they can use their terminals, all the new terminals that are coming out, support, all these cool new technologies at an affordable price. So businesses can now afford to do that. So from our perspective, it's software, and how do we make the software do what can help that merchant at his location.
Ali?
I agree with that. It's definitely about the software and the platform.
Absolutely. Yep. Agreed.
Well, our shot clock is down to 5 minutes, or under 5 minutes now, so we want to make sure that we're addressing any questions that you might have. It's hard for me to see, but if you could just stand up, jump on your chair. Yes, we have a question.
Andy Degnan from MagTech. Are there any particular threats that cause concern around the proliferation of QR codes? And as a consumer, I see a QR code, I have no idea what it is. And if I scan it, could a threat actor be using that in some way to break into my phone, or steal my data, or do something nefarious?
Well, I definitely think from a fraud perspective, people get all these emails, log into your bank or scan this you have to be careful. I tell on my podcast, I've talked about fraud, and I say, don't scan a QR code if you don't know who it's from, what it is, and all that. The same thing, you get a text message that says, your bank says there's fraud on your account. It doesn't mean click the link and then it looks like a fake Bank of America page. And they guess that which bank, they send you enough text messages, they're going to hit one of your banks maybe, and then you give them your login information, and next thing you know, the person's logged into your bank account and they're zelling out $500 to themselves. To the fraudster is getting $500. So, fraud is rampant right now through text messages, SMS, fake QR codes, and different things like that.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Consumer
Ali,
beware.
Yeah, I think that the short answer to that is always know what you're scanning. Someone who's trying to do a fraudulent transaction of some methodology is going to figure out a way to do it. So I think it's always the awareness in anything that you're clicking on, whether it's a QR code or anything.
Right.
Most of the huge breaches have been, somebody inside an organization that inadvertently clicked on an email that they shouldn't have clicked on, So be aware of what you're doing, because there's always, no matter how protected everybody thinks they are, there's always a way that the scammers will get around it.
No, like I never open an email attachment unless I know who it's from,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. I think the long and short is that, it is easier for, say, the common street criminal to manipulate a QR code. I remember the stories from, years past when they would appear on concert posters or event posters, scan your code to buy your festival tickets, and the criminals would come and put a sticker on top of the legitimate sticker that would direct people to a counterfeit site. They would collect the funds there, and of course the individual shows up with what they think is a legitimate ticket, and it's not there. Other questions? All right, well, I've got some more. We've got 1 minute and 30 seconds left, so keep your responses short. We've seen some regulatory impacts come in here recently affecting merchant community with PCI 4.0. Won't take permanent effect for a little while, but it's certainly going to increase the strength or the need for a stronger protection of personal identifiable information, card numbers, things of that nature that merchants might have. What's the initial feedback that you're hearing from the merchant community with regard to the new requirements?
In general, merchants don't like PCI compliance. So they don't like
And
answering.
terminal manufacturers love it.
Well, they don't like answering the questionnaire. And I think people's systems need to be secure, but I don't think there's legitimately enough simple training to give merchants that they really understand the value of what they're paying for. And also, when you look at even terminals, right, from a PayFac standpoint, PayFacs don't charge merchants for PCI compliance. So that's the big rub with PCI. It's needed, but
Yeah, it's one of those like necessary evil kind of
Necessary
things.
evil.
But I do think, large enterprise merchants really value that and do make the investments. I think as you sort of go down the spectrum, that's where it becomes a little hazy in terms of the cost benefit. I think, at the intellectual level, they understand the security aspect, but, obviously don't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
Sure, quick one.
So if point of sale can be used for the other use case, I was hearing saying that the point of sale can be used for the other use case. And my question is really going to make sense to use that point of sale for other use case? And it is going to add the value as per the customer point of view.
The question was, does it really add value to add additional functionality at the point of sale other than the payment? Is that other than the payment? Very
Yeah,
quickly.
I think in our world, we absolutely see that. We have a host of, you go out on our marketplace, you can see all the applications that have been written to run on a customer's terminal. We have use cases that don't even involve payment. So I have one of the big ones that people are, not big, but one of the groups right now that has written an application using our toolkits to monitor the refrigerators in a restaurant. So they're taking temperatures from the restaurant using one of our A920 terminals, and that terminal is sending data back to their home offices if the refrigerant goes below a certain temperature. So because it's all Android, the toolkits are easy. There's a lot of Android developers. It's easy to write to that. And by adding it into a terminal, either that's its only use case, or you're adding it alongside payment if they're doing something else. We're seeing all kinds, your imagination runs wild. What do you want to do on a terminal? It can be done in today's world.
yeah, even for a small business, just downloading time and attendance,
Yep.
Can help them with their payroll. Having the employees clock in and out, even if they're just using the device for payments only, they can get little apps to put in there that can save them a lot of time. with their business.
Well, great. Heather and Alan both have booths there in the exhibit hall, so they'll be around. Feel free to ask questions, and Ali and I are going to be just hanging out for the rest of the day and tomorrow, so feel free to chat us up as well. But please join me in thanking Heather, Alan, and Ali. Thank you.
It was good.